evening and welcome to New York Buddha Dharma. And my name is John Baker. I'm one of the people who inhabits this chair from time to time. We have been working our way through the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma by Chogyam Trungpa. And we're up to the section where people are taking refuge. And we've been going through a sutra, the sutra of the recollection of the three jewels, of the noble three jewels. And we had a talk on the Buddha, and tonight I'm going to be talking about the other two jewels, the Dharma and the Sangha. This chapter is 14 and 15 of the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, Volume 1. I also want to mention something else in starting, because I'm going to reference this a bit. I've come across a book that I want to recommend. Can you see it? Okay. It's called Our Pristine Mind by a Tibetan fellow named Orgyen Chowang. And I'm finding it excellent and recommend it to my Dharma brothers and sisters. I just think it's very, very helpful. I'm finding it personally helpful, and I think it will be helpful for many of you. And if you have difficulty with it, I invite you to contact me, and we can get together, and I think I can help you with it, because it is profound, although it's very, very simple. And I'm going to talk a bit about it tonight, because really it's at the heart of what Buddhism is. That's what this is talking about. And so it is very relevant to the idea of taking refuge, which is all about becoming a Buddhist. Taking refuge is when you finish taking refuge, when you've taken the refuge vows, you are formally a member of the Buddhist Sangha. And does this sound good? Okay. I'll give you the provenance of this book because it's relevant as well. I have been fortunate enough in the last 15 years to be studying an area of the Buddhist teachings called the Great Perfection in English. It's translated Dzogchen in Tibetan, Maha-ati in Sanskrit, or sometimes called Mahasandhi in Sanskrit. And with a teacher named Khenpo Namdrol, and he's a wonderful Nyingma teacher. In fact, he used to be the head of the school that trains the other Nyingma. Nyingmas are one of the four sects of Tibetan Buddhism. And he trained the main teachers for all of the Nyingmas. Khenpo Namdrol did, including, I'll bet, this fellow, Khenpo Orgyen Chowang. Khenpo is a title that you get when you finish training at the school, and it sort of means PhD. And this fellow's young. By my standards, or Khenpo Namdrol's standards, he's about 50, probably in his late 40s. So he might be of that generation that went through when Khenpo Namdrol was running the Shedra. It's called the Shedra, is the name for the school, for a school that trains Buddhists. And I would like to teach a course on Dzogchen because it's so meaningful to me, and I'd like to share it with people. The problem is that traditionally you have to go through a bunch of hoops in order to receive Dzogchen teachings. You have to receive certain empowerments, is the English word, wangkur in Tibetan, initiations, sometimes they're translated as. And you have to, and then when you receive these teachings and you study a text, that text will be restricted, and you won't be able to share that text with people who aren't themselves authorized to read it in one way or another. Sometimes you can't share those teachings with people who weren't there at the time that you received them from the person, that same person, same time. So it's very tight. And there are a number of texts on Dzogchen that are available in the public domain, but I'm not finding them that terrific, not as good as what I was exposed to through my particular teacher. So I called up his translator, who's also a close friend of mine. Her name is Sangha Khandro. And I asked her, I told her about this dilemma that I felt I was in, and she recommended this book, which I had never heard of. And she knows this fellow, Orgen Chowang, Khenpo Orgen Chowang. And she said that she herself, she's a teacher as well as a translator, and that she herself is using this. She lives in Oregon, Ashland, Oregon, and teaches on the West Coast. So I got the book, and I am very impressed. It's a very simple version or teaching of the heart of Dzogchen teachings. I mean, Dzogchen in itself, it can be very complex, and yet the irony is that to understand it is its utter simplicity. And that's what this book is communicating. So I'm recommending it. I would like to have a book club. I would like to have the people that I'm teaching read it so that I can help them. I think it would help them along. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it tonight, about what it's teaching. Because it lies at the heart of what it means to be a Buddhist. And it's basically this. What we are given as sentient beings is mind. And mind encompasses awareness of everything that we can experience, right? These are usually summed up as the 6 knowables. And the 6 knowables are objects of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, physical sensations, and objects of mind, mental objects. There are 2 modalities for mind. One of them enlightened and the other confused. The enlightened mind, which is what the title of this book is referring to, our pristine mind. I'm not sure, he doesn't give the Tibetan for what he's calling pristine mind, but my guess is that it's the word yeshe. Yeshe is a Tibetan word that translates the Sanskrit word jnana, and it literally means primordial, or maybe pristine, knowing. She is a root word to know, and ye means primordial, before time, without beginning. It's a little vague, but you get the general gist. Yeshe is the foundation of our very being. It's not something that we have to cultivate. It's rather something that has been obscured, that's been covered over. We've been misdirected, and we have lost sight of it. It's a figure ground problem. Let me come back to that and talk about the second aspect of mind. Yeshe is the ground. The figure is what's often called ordinary mind, sem in Tibetan, chitta in Sanskrit. Sem is thinking mind. It's the mind of mental events. It's emotions. It's little movements of mind. It's thoughts. It's words. It's all the little things that come up in our mind and then pass away momentarily. This is thinking mind. And if you were to sort of draw a picture of these 2 minds, as it were, the picture would be you take a piece of paper and then you draw a figure on it, like any picture of a stick figure of a person. The stick figure is sem. Those are the mental events. The paper is yeshe, is pristine mind. It's kind of like, and then the analogy that Orgen Chowang uses, which is an ancient one, is of clouds in the sky. I think the first time I encountered that was reading Milarepa, who is an 11th century Tibetan yogi, but I'm sure it predates him, this metaphor. And the way it works is that the sky, you see, is your pristine mind. It's always there, the blue sky. And then the little mind are the events that occur in the sky, like clouds, for instance. And clouds can go through the sky. You can see the big blue sky, and then you see a little cloud in the middle of it, and it passes across and eventually disappears from the sky, right? Just like thoughts go across our mind. Or sometimes the clouds are so thick that they completely obscure the sky, and you've got a cloudy day. But you still know that that cloud that's obscuring the sky is just temporary, because that's the nature of the clouds. It's the nature of mental events. They are temporary, and they pass. And then the next day, the clouds all evaporated, and we see the blue sky again. The blue sky is our foundational mind. It's the mind you don't shut off. It's always aware of something. It's always here. It's here whether you are thinking or not, without effort. You come back to it. You lose track of it. You get lost in little thoughts, and you're thinking, what do I have for lunch, and am I going to pay the rent, and I'm lonely, and I'm getting sick, and whatever the problem is, and you get lost in thoughts, and you forget about it, and then the horn goes off, right, in the street, and it wakes you up out of your reverie, and you're back, and you are present. That's the quality of big mind, of that in the Zen tradition. This is called big mind, what he's calling pristine mind. And little mind, in the Zen tradition, is what he's calling thinking mind, or ordinary mind. So we got, in the Zen, Soto Zen tradition, we have big mind and little mind. In the Tibetan tradition, they call it pristine, or primordial mind, and ordinary mind, little mind. When we get lost in our thoughts, in the figures, it's like one time Trungpa Rinpoche was teaching a version of this, and he went up to a blackboard. He was at the University of Colorado, and this has always been meaningful for me. This is like 45 years ago. And he went up to the blackboard and he drew a stick bird, picture of a bird. And he said to the students there, these sleepy Colorado undergraduates, he said, "What's this a picture of?" Nobody wanted to answer. Finally somebody says, "It's a picture of a bird." And he said, "It's a picture of the sky." You see, that's the thing. We get focused on the figure, the thoughts, and we lose track of the ground of our being. This is the ground. We're here all the time. And the way you come back to the ground is by coming back to this wide open space in the present moment. It's always in the present moment. Thoughts, the figures, which take us away into dreams, are always about the past and the future. Even if they're about the present, they're about the future. If we're thinking about the present, we're thinking, I don't like what's going on right now, that's because we want to change it in the future. Whereas, if we just come back and relax into a simple, open awareness of this space, of this room, in this present moment, then we're back in the ground. And the thoughts, those anxious, anxiety-driven, past and future-oriented dreams, what the thoughts are, evaporate, at least for a moment. And then we get stuck in them again. We start thinking, I've got this big problem, I got to solve it. I have a hope. I had a wonderful time last night. I'd like to do that again. All these thoughts we tell ourselves. We walk down the street talking to ourselves continually, lost in thought, until something wakes us up. You stub your toe, the taxi cab horn, blares in your ear, and it wakes you up out of your reverie, whatever it might be. So you see, meditation practice is about switching your loyalty, your allegiance, from little mind, the thinking mind, the thoughts, those mental events, full of emotions, driven by anxiety, all about the past and the future, full of story, fragments, mostly, and switching one's loyalty from them to awake, to being awake to this world as it arises now. And in doing that, one achieves an enormous freedom, a freedom from neurotic mind. But it also involves a kind of giving up of the familiar little sort of, as Trungpa Rinpoche called it, cocoon of web of stories that we weave around ourselves and that are so familiar, and in a way comforting. He used to say that cocoon of stories that we spin around ourselves, it's claustrophobic, and it sort of shuts us in, and it's very, very familiar and repetitive, the stories, monotonous even, but it's familiar and it has a kind of friendliness to it. He said it's sort of stinky, like you smell your own armpit, your own body odor. And there's a kind of friendly familiarity to it, even though it's stinky. And so we have to give that up. There's a certain renunciation. Sometimes we do a chant here. It's the lineage chant. And the second verse of that chant goes, renunciation is the foot of meditation, as is taught. Not being possessed by food and wealth, to the meditator who cuts the ties to such a life, grant your blessing, so that I am no longer attached to honor and ownership. You see, when you give up these thoughts, you're giving up the desire for material things, honor and ownership, food and wealth, because that desire lives in thought. And instead, you're coming back into the present moment. And that can be a tough thing to do, because it's so ingrained. It's so habitual. Right? But the rewards, we're talking about enlightenment. Waking up from dream, waking up from the ultimate dream that you wake up from is the dream of me. Me and my big problem, me and my birth, me and my death, me and my well-being, me and my sorrows, me and my ongoing worry and anxiety. All of that lives in little mind. That's the only place that sense of I lives. It doesn't live in the pristine mind, in the mind of the present moment. And so when we practice, what we're doing is, don't move. Let's just do it together. You don't have to assume a meditation posture. You can do this as you walk down the street. You just see your thoughts, and you come back to this space of the present moment, and you see it. There are no thoughts. It's just here. And you rest in that. That's all it takes. And then you might think, gee, it ought to be deeper. That's a thought. Let it go. There's a tremendous renunciation in this, a tremendous letting go. You're giving up reference points. You're giving up the idea of getting somewhere. See, that's the biggest thing about ego. Ego always wants to get somewhere different than where it is. And so whenever you have a thought, you just see that. I want to get somewhere. Am I getting anywhere with this meditation? And then you just see that. And you let it go. And when thoughts arise in your mind, you don't judge them. If you do judge them, you just see that and don't judge that. Judgment is all about getting somewhere. I want to get from worse to better, from better to best. So we let it go. Or you just see it. You just see. When your thoughts come up, as soon as you're aware that you're thinking, see, there are only two modalities. Either you're a dreamer and you're lost in thought, or you're back and you're aware that you were thinking. Once you come back, that's it. Nothing more is necessary. And in fact, anything more is getting back into another dream. Then you're having a dream of, gee, I wish I had a thoughtless meditation. And that's another thought. And you just see that. And you come back into the present moment. And the thoughts, they self-liberate. They go poof, like this. As soon as you become aware that you're thinking, then you're not in the dream anymore. And the thoughts just go poof. And then maybe another one arises, or maybe it doesn't. And the trick of the meditation is to become more and more familiar with this open awareness and learn to relax into it. It's a big rest to relax into this awareness. And this awareness is not only full of rest, because you're not thinking and worrying about the future and the past. It's not only full of rest, it's full of a kind of warmth. It's the warmth of well-being. That you could actually be sort of healthy and well-being in this relaxing into this present moment. That we all could. And he's doing a beautiful job of presenting this, and it drives it home in a way that's very simple. I mean, there's a few things I'm not wild about in the book, but very few. And it's just, I'd be cavilling with details because the main points are really good. And the virtue of the book is that it's boiling it down. It's getting to the heart of our path. Then there's a tremendous amount you can elaborate around that. And that's what, there's all this detail of the Dharma. But it's so important to understand the heart of it, around which everything else constellates. So with that in mind, let's just talk about the three jewels and taking refuge and what that means again. So the Buddha, you see, is our example. He's an example of somebody who did this. What a tremendous act of renunciation to give up all those little ego stories that we tell ourselves. And that's what he did. He saw very clearly what's real and what isn't. And he switched his allegiance from the dreams to the reality. And he's an example and an inspiration to us. And he left us teachings which guide us in how to do this and encourage us. This kind of teaching that I'm just repeating to you now, which is the second of the three jewels. It's the Dharma. And the Dharma, here I'm going to go to my notes now because Trungpa Rinpoche said a few things that are maybe worth repeating. Dharma. Dharma is a word that in Sanskrit it's the language, Ch in Tibetan. And Dharma has many meanings, actually. In the Buddhist context, it means the truth, the teachings, the law, and the path. In a broader context, it also means norm. And there were pillars erected all around India by a famous king of India in the 3rd century BC, named Ashoka. And they're called the Ashokan pillars. You can see them. They're still there. Can you believe? After 2,300 years. They're amazing. They're granite. They're usually about 10, 12, 15 feet high. I think they're 4-sided. And they often have inscriptions on them about the Dharma. And he was regarded as a Buddhist king, although it's a little unclear whether, when he used the word Dharma, whether he was referring to secular or religious norms and laws. But if you go to Lumbini, for instance, where the Buddha was born, and you can do that, it's now in Nepal, just across the border, and there is a Ashokan pillar there. I was there in 1981. And in 1981, the only thing at Lumbini was a Shaivite temple. It's a temple to Shiva, the Hindu god. Some flags that were strung up. They weren't prayer flags. And a parking lot. And the Ashokan pillar. And then there was somebody hanging around, I can't remember, some sort of a caretaker or somebody. And that was it. It was empty. Now I've heard it's been terrifically built up and turned into a tourist attraction, and there are temples, Buddhist temples that have been built around, and so you can go there because, this is where the Buddha was born. And you can see the tree, supposedly, that his mother stood and put her hand against and leaned, and he came out of her side, is the traditional story. So, Trungpa Rinpoche says that the Dharma is based on honesty. This is the truth, the law. A lack of self-deception. You see, all thought is self-deceptive. It's telling us a very partial story. The thought has two main qualities that are important to understand as a meditator. The first is that it's completely transitory. Thoughts come and go. And when you see a thought, it's already leaving. The second is that it is deceptive. It is illusory. It leads you into thinking that it's really, really, really true. And it's not. It's a very partial truth. It's looking at things from one angle. It's taking a tiny slice out of life and saying, this is what I think is important. It's kind of like if we were to go around this room and ask everybody what happened tonight at the end, everybody would have a different story of what went on here, because each one of us would see this partly in the same way, but also in very different ways, depending on our character and our past and our trainings and our qualities of hope and fear and love and hate, and all of that would go into filtering the way we'd hear it. That's why thought, we take it to be so true. It's really, really, really true that I've got to worry about this particular thing. But it's not. It's just from that particular angle at that moment that the thought is in your mind, that it grips you with panic and fear. And then it goes and you relax. And you're not as afraid as you were at that particular moment when that thought was just gripping you, right? Thoughts do that. They come and they go with their ability to subsume us. So those are the two qualities of thought, temporary and illusory. The Dharma is neither. The Dharma is about this pristine mind, this primordial mind. It's about truth. It's fundamental. It is not temporary, and it is not illusory. He says, the Dharma encourages us to step out of our habitual patterns, our little nest. There it is. That's the little mind. And that it produces greater vision. The greater vision, you see, is the vision of primordial or pristine mind. It's the mind of the present moment. It's this. And when you begin to touch into this, all kinds of things are going to open up. Your intuition is going to become much, much more keen because you're much more present. You're paying attention. Oftentimes we're just lost in thought. We look at somebody and we're busy thinking. We've got our agenda and we don't really see that person. You don't look into them. You don't feel them. And when you come into pristine mind, your intuition, your powers of perception are much more acute. And that's why they talk about people who become Buddhas and that they develop siddhi. They're called siddhis, are powers, even paranormal powers, although nobody gives a shit about that. So for instance, Khyentse Rinpoche up there, he was supposed to have a lot of that, a lot of siddhi, and couldn't care less. My own teacher used to say, CCL, couldn't care less. The funny thing was he had a girlfriend for a while named C.L. Trzanski. She had a Polish name, C.L. And people would come up to him and ask him something, and he would say, CCL. As though, my bride had been sitting there next to him. And And here's the thing, it puts an end to the journey. That's what the Dharma does. You see, the journey is always about making things better, getting from here to better, or to best. The Dharma puts an end to that journey because we're constantly coming home. This is home, back to where we already were. Then the last jewel, the Sangha. We take refuge in these. Refuge is a funny word for it, right? We're becoming refugees. Refugees from thinking mind. Refugees from the neurosis. We're giving all that up. The Sangha is that when you take the refuge vow, then you become a member of the Sangha. And I want to see if I really want to talk about these 10. They're the 10 qualities of the Sangha that are described in the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels. The Sangha enters properly. You don't hold on to your ego. And what Trungpa Rinpoche says is you give up theism. That's a beauty. Theism means when you believe in an external deity, you're looking for someone to save you. Someone who's going to do it for you, who's going to make it all better. And as Buddhists, we're giving that up. We're relying completely on what we've got ourselves. No external reference point, no external savior. You don't have to believe in any of that, much less rely on it. They enter gracefully, the Sangha enters insightfully. But what that means is, when you say insightfully, that means they're coming back to Rigpa. Rigpa is the quality of mind that sees big mind. It cuts through. It sees truly. It's true vision. The word in Sanskrit is vidya. Ignorance, which is what sentient beings in samsara suffer from, right? We suffer from ignorance. We're not enlightened. Ignorance is avidya, not seeing, or ma-rigpa, not seeing. Not seeing what? Not seeing the ground, this big mind. We're lost in thought, so we don't see this little mind. Most people walk around completely lost in thought their whole lives. They hardly notice all this. This is secondary. This is just grist for the thinking mill. All this stuff that we live in. And when you begin to practice, you're reversing that importance. And you're saying, this is what's primary. Thought is just a tool, a useful way to take things. Pass the butter, please. That's what thought is. That's what words are. They're just useful. But the big thing, the big awareness is right here in the present moment. We switch it around. We say, I got to solve this problem. I've got a list of problems. I'm going to make a list of all my problems. I'm going to put them on a piece of paper. Legal pad. Multiple pages. Number them, right? And these are all the things that I'm thinking about. My rent, my love life, my health, whatever it is, all this stuff. Got to call so-and-so, got to do this. And we lose track. He talks about the Sangha, and this is important, a sense of friendship. Because we need help to make this shift of allegiance. This book is a help. Orgen Chowang, through his book, he's being a friend. He's being a teacher. He's representing the teacher principle. The teacher is a member of the Sangha, the community. And the Sangha is a big help in reminding us and helping us to make this very difficult transition. This is the transition of your life, of our lives. I just had a friend die yesterday. He'd been here, came here as part of this group briefly. Bob Feldman. Anybody remember him? Yeah, a few people. He's a member of the Nalanda Bodhi Sangha, which inhabits this space as well. And he was 78, and he died of stage 4 lung cancer yesterday. And There's going to be a ceremony for him probably Wednesday, maybe at the Shambhala Center, I think. What's called a Sukhavati. It's kind of a funeral service to send him off. I read a statement by the Dalai Lama recently about death. He said, no big deal, it's a change of clothes. That's nice. I mean, I've heard things like that so many times, you know. My own teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche, I love this story. A friend of mine, Michael Cohen, Sherab Cohen, his name is, for those of you who might have come across him online, way back. He was living in Boulder, and Trungpa Rinpoche was there, and his father was dying in Chicago. And so Michael described going to Trungpa Rinpoche and telling him that he was going to go to Chicago and see his father to say goodbye. And did Rinpoche have any suggestions what he might say to his father? Rinpoche tells him, you could tell him to cheer up. That's what Michael was told to tell his father, who was dying. Cheer up. We tend to take it so seriously. But the best way to die, and this is what the Tibetan texts tell you, is if you've trained in switching this allegiance, in being able to rest your mind in this big mind, and you die that way, resting your mind in big mind, that is the way to die. If you don't, if you have your allegiance in thought, you'll die fearfully and painfully. You'll be thinking about all the stuff that you're losing, all the loved ones, you know, your body, everything that you've loved in life, and it's all going away. And you'll be afraid. What's going to come next in the future? And you'll be terrified. And that's a bad way to die. All the texts tell you, die cheerfully, like Trungpa Rinpoche said, with confidence, resting your mind in this big open space. And then perhaps you experience it the way the Dalai Lama says, you know, that it's just going to be a change of clothes. So the Sangha, the community of fellow practitioners, is a huge support, encouragement. And not only that, but it's delightful to share sanity with other sentient beings and to be able to celebrate these teachings together. So that's an important aspect of the Sangha. And there are a lot of there are 10 qualities of the Sangha. I'm just not going to go through them. You can read them. I'm not that wild about these two chapters. One thing is that the Sangha is an object of generosity. That's sort of like, that's what that's referring to, is the fact that, the Buddha's own community, his Sangha of monks, they gave up all their worldly possessions and they went around begging. And they owned nothing more than their robes and their bowl, their begging bowl. And so for them, generosity, that's how they lived, the generosity of the people who gave to them. And it says they are an object of generosity. They're worthy of that because they express and spread the most basic sanity. So giving to the Sangha is an attempt to shift the world towards sanity. And being a part of the Sangha is an attempt to shift the world towards sanity. And when you give to the Sangha, there can be no barter mentality. It's not like you're going to give and then you're going to get. There's just simple giving. So that's it about the 3 jewels. And there's some people here who've expressed interest in taking refuge. Yep. Oh, 4, 5. Oh, wow, 6. Oh my gosh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's terrific. Okay, I want to get your names down on a piece of paper, and we're going to, I think we're going to have a meeting of us Sangha takers and discuss this a little bit, and then we'll do it. This is great. Larry, no, I can't say that. I've gotten some help on the ceremony. I just have to find a place that'll make a seal, a Chinese seal. Anybody got any ideas in Chinatown? You know, a chop. It's called a chop.
Yeah, I think I know what it is.
Thanks. We'll get together. Okay, so we can have a discussion.
What kind of seal?
Huh?
What kind of seal? What kind of seal? Wax seal.
It's a seal, you know, that you take and you put ink on it and you stamp a piece of paper.
Yeah, I know, but what's to be written on it?
Well, it'll be the preceptor's name.
Oh.
And then it gets stamped on the certificate that each of the refugees receives with your particular refuge name. You know, when you take refuge, you get a refuge name.
I already have my own.
Huh?
I already have my own seal.
Okay, you have your own seal, but you get another seal on your certificate. You can put your seal on it too if you want. I have to have a seal because I'm going to be giving you the name. And then you get a name. I mean, I've seen names ranging from glorious Dharma holder protector to I had a friend who got the name River of Death. I don't know what the heck that meant. Huh?
You will be picking the name for us.
Yes. Yeah, that's the tradition.
Oh, good to know what I learned.
All right. So let's have a discussion.
You mentioned intuition.
Huh?
You mentioned intuition. Are people born with intuition? You mentioned intuition. Are people born with intuition, or is it a learned experience? Because some people seem to have more intuition than others.
Yeah. Intuition is just a name. It makes it a little voodoo-ish when you talk about intuition. It's a name for the intelligence that is here in this basic ground, in this mind, primordial mind. It's already here. But the problem is that we cover it over by getting lost in thought. We get misdirected. So we're so busy thinking like this that we're not looking. We sort of put blinders on. Our thought becomes literally like sunglasses. It actually can dim your visual awareness. You know, sometimes it makes the colors go gray. And all the senses. So when you begin to come present, you're beginning to tune in to the intelligence that is here, illuminating the ground of now, this basic space. You know, this mind, primordial mind, he hasn't talked about this so far. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the book, and I don't know if he's going to. But in the Tibetan texts, they talk about this by basic mind. They describe it in many ways, but one of the most fundamental descriptions is that it is the union of space, literally space, and knowingness. Ying and Yeshe in Tibetan. Ying is the space. Space, you can't find it, right? It doesn't, not like you can grab it, and yet it accommodates everything. This gesture arises out of and passes back into space. These words come out of space and go back into space. Everything arises in the present moment out of space and dies back into it. If you can call it dying. It just arises out and passes back into it. That's what space is. So space is sometimes called the womb from which everything else is produced. In Sanskrit, it's called the Dharma Dhatu. Dharma means, in this sense, it has another meaning. Remember, I told you Dharma has many meanings, that word. In this case, it means phenomenal arising, a phenomena, like a sound, like a color blue, like a sensation on your leg. These are all phenomena, these are all dharmas. And the dhatu is the yin, it's the space. So one of the words for reality is dharma dhatu, and what it means is the space that produces all of the phenomenal events, the phenomenal arisings. And what we're doing is we're coming back to that. You see, we're bringing our awareness. It's full of knowingness automatically. You don't have to know anything. There is no knower. It's all lit. This whole space is lit with knowingness. Like the blue of that cushion is glowing with knowingness, the sound of this word. And so when we come back to it, our intelligence increases. We actually begin to hear more, see more. There are practices, for conscious listening. You can find this online, books. And they teach you how to listen more consciously and accurately to other people. And the way you do it is by clearing away any thought. The way you don't do it, to be a bad listener. Somebody says, Becca says, I just came back from Milan. And I say, I was in Milan 3 months ago. That's poor listening. Because I'm already lost in my own thoughts about my trip to Milan 3 months ago, and I'm not even interested or listening to, what he has to say about his. A good listener is looking, and they're listening with curiosity. They're saying, why did you go to Milan? What happened to you in Milan? How was it in Milan? Did you eat any good food in Milan? Whatever. And you're actually looking in and using your curiosity. Curiosity is a great opener for intuition.
I don't know if this is a silly question or not, but if somebody was to react and say, I was in Milan.
Mike.
I don't know if this is a silly question or not, but if somebody was to say, I just got back from Milan, and I was to respond, I was in Milan 3 months ago, but then follow that with, so how was your trip?
That's better, because, you've sort of yo-yoed, I used to watch Trump.
It's kind of like catching yourself.
Huh?
It's kind of like catching yourself.
Yeah, catch yourself.
Yeah.
That's
which I do all the time.
Yes, we all do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I used to watch Trungpa Rinpoche when he was with people. I remember sitting with him at a party, and it was an outdoor party in a garden, and he was sitting in a chair, and I was sitting next to him. And people started coming up to him one after the next, and they would wait their turn to come up and speak to him. And he was so focused on them, Whatever they said, he was interested. He wanted to hear more, about them. It was like endless curiosity about people. And he spent his life like that, just completely curious. Yeah. Marie, it's an example to me, but go ahead.
So when you're saying that we shouldn't be lost in our thoughts, but when we really have to think about our future, like about plans in future, the same paying rent or whatever, which we have to really think about it for future. So how do we act in this case?
You will be able to think about your future without thinking about it. You will be able to take care of the rent without thinking about it. And even if you do think about it, the amount that we think about it is so out of proportion to what is actually needed. We think about it over and over and over and over, and then again. It's like it's repeated over habitually. And that's so unnecessary. It's just not necessary to the degree that we do it. We worry. We beat it to death. We worry. And it's all about me, that worrying. But the actual taking care of practicality, very simple. You can come back to this present moment and you will actually probably live your life more accurately and intelligently. The more you come back out of neurotic, anxious thought into the present moment. Now, it's interesting. I've heard two different statements about this sort of minimal use of thought. On the one hand, Trungpa Rinpoche says you don't need thought at all. That the only purpose of thought is to keep this story about I alive. But that you don't need it and you can take care of your life just fine. I'm not quite clear. I'd have to go back and read Orgen Chowang. He seems to think that maybe there's a minimalist need for thought, for the sense of I. It all revolves around the definition of I. Because there's sort of two different ways to take I. The first way, the neurotic way, is the I that lives in our thoughts. And it's all about, I've got to worry about this, I hope for that, and so forth. At the same time, it's true that even if you give up thought, each one of us has a particular quality and characteristic. You're a woman, I'm a man. Your hair is dark, mine's gone and it's gray, what's left. Your voice is higher, mine is lower. You have a particular quality of being attractive. You sort of magnetize people. Me, I'm very, very intellectual. These are qualities that we have naturally, each one of us, and they're described as being part of our enlightened aspects, the way we manifest. Each one of us has, and they're actually described in the Vajrayana teachings, the tantric teachings, in terms of what are called the 5 Buddha families. It's saying that all phenomena all arise in combinations of these 5 fundamental qualities. And they organize. This is the organization of the mandala. You've heard of mandalas, perhaps. They're schematics for reality. And the mandala is organized into 5 locations: north, south, east, west, and center. And each one of those represents different qualities. And these qualities actually get hidden by thought, because we're so busy thinking that we're not expressing our true nature. And when you begin to clear away the debris of anxiety and come present, then you begin to really manifest your particular style, which is different. We're like snowflakes. And you begin to shine and show it more. My friend Michael Cohen, that I mentioned before, Sherab Cohen, who went to see his father in Chicago and all that, he is so Ratna. And Ratna is the family of the South. Ratna and also Vajra. He's very, very intellectual. And Ratna is full of wealth. It's all about giving and generosity. And Vajra is all about intellect. And I'm talking about the positive aspects. There are negative aspects. There's the quality of the seasons. There's the quality of interior decoration. There's the quality of your clothes, the food, everything. They all fall into these. And we have these qualities and we express them even more. And you just, thought obscures that. And it's very questionable. At the very least, we don't need to be doing it nearly as much as we are. And maybe, if you believe Trungpa Rinpoche, for any of you who have the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, that book, Volume 3, page 400. You can take a look at it. He talks about you just don't need thought. He says you really don't need it. He goes over and over, says that over and over again. We could have a debate, though. I mean, maybe we do need thought, a little bit. I always like to quote Freud. Freud said about, and this applies to thought, repetition is the hallmark of neurosis. That's a quote from Sigmund Freud. And boy, do we repeat our thoughts.
I was just going to, you were talking about the clouds and the sky, and she's asking about how do you go about everyday life, and then, so there's another analogy. It's like very common. You probably heard it before. It's like a screen and a movie, right? Mm-hmm. So your everyday life, it's the movie that's playing on the screen. So if you do anything, for example, from picking up that glass of water to paying your bill, to giving birth to a baby, to raising it up, to whatever, you can go about your everyday life just like that. But everything you do, you go to the screen first. Don't go to the movie. Always go to the screen first. And you're in the right place. In the movie, you play itself out. It's one scene by another.
Thank you. That's terrific. I'll elaborate on that a little bit with a story. You see, we get so caught up in the stories, right, of our thoughts, and we lose track of now. And then somebody says, hey, look what's happening now, and you come back, and you just relax, open your mind into this present moment. We can do it every instant right now, all of us. So I went to the movies once with Trungpa Rinpoche. Jaws, back when Jaws was new. And you remember the opening sequence in Jaws? Yeah, really. Dum 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 dum. And that woman is swimming. It's in the early morning, and she's out in the ocean, and she's getting hit by a shark, and her body's jerking like this, And I'm sitting next to Trungpa Rinpoche, and actually his wife and my wife at the time were sitting behind us, and I'm going, See, I feel like I was being pushed back in my seat by the horror of what I was watching on the screen. And suddenly I realized, I look over here, and there's Trungpa Rinpoche, and he's not looking at the movie, he's looking at me. and I turned to him like this, and he says, "John, you're so naive." Because what happened was, I just got completely caught in the story, right? And you lose track of the fact that it's just a story. And your emotions are going, right? And you're, like this, my God, they're getting eaten. And we do that all the time in movies, right? And we lose track of the fact that it's a story. That's exactly what we do with our thoughts. We lose track of the fact that they're stories, and that they're temporary, and that they're not really true. They're illusory. They're delusory. They're misdirecting us from what is really important in our lives. Jaws. So maybe we ought to end, unless somebody's got something that anybody want to contribute something that hasn't spoken? Matthew or? Yeah, Mike.
Just the thing about thoughts and how we beat ourselves up over it, and how negative it becomes to us. I always, probably about a year ago, I went through quite a big shift in my life, and I was stripped back to 4 bags of belongings, and that was my life. And it's very easy to sort of blame yourself and other people consistently, and you end up doing the same story all the time. And so something I sort of, before I found Buddhism, something I realized was I'm not getting anywhere with this process in any shape or form. And very quickly I made this image up in my head of how it was like looking at myself, if I was explaining my situation to someone, their reaction, and it would be a repetitive story continuously. And it was almost like I'd opened the cupboard door, taken out this piece of wood with a rusty nail, and I was just like beating myself with it. And after I'd spoken the story of what had happened, and I hadn't accomplished anything. I hadn't moved away from anything. So, like you said about listening to people and talking about what they have to say was something that got me through that. And instead of bringing my story and all those thoughts of fear and everything, was actually listening to with joy and compassion to other people, and say, hey, what have you been up to, instead of my old rubbish, So I think it's very important to compassion is what in Buddhism I think is one of the massive things. I think you realise compassion to other people, and open up to what they have to, because we're all in the same boat, and it's
well said.
Let's share that paddle.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Okay, Marie.
So compassion, but when you're when you're getting very angry or mad about someone, and you just lose this everything, what you know about compassion and Buddhism and everything. So how you come back, how you deal with that. Like last night, I got very mad with my sister because I made a joke and she took it as an offense. And then I said to her that it was a joke and I didn't mean it and sorry. And she kept on like screaming on me, and I got so mad and upset with that. I couldn't, like, I lost myself. And then I thought that, come on, I mean, I have to find a way to like, find myself and get away from this madness. And but I couldn't. I mean, I started to meditate, but it helped a little bit. But it's still, like, the whole night I was moved with this anger.
So this is a tremendous opportunity in this kind of meditation. Because, see, the normal approach is you want to get rid of that pain and your anger and her anger, and you want to... the normal approach is that you might use meditation as a way of trying to calm your mind, as a way of trying to push that experience away and achieve some kind of separation from it. And you can do that to some degree, but really what this practice is about is that you accept it. You accept your sister's anger. You accept your pain, hearing it, and your anger, and you see it, and you bring it to awareness. You see, the thing is, when you're not aware, what you're doing is you're thinking about it, and you're lost in the thought, she shouldn't have said that, and then I could say this, and maybe I should try and stuff that down, and we're thinking about what you're going to do, and what she did, and what you're going to do, and all that. Stop it. And just see it. And see it and say, it's okay. I can see that. And you just let it be. And then see what happens. That's the practice. You bring everything to awareness. Everything. If you want to make your breath an object of awareness, make that an object of awareness. Your feeling toward your sister, her feeling towards you, any aspect of it. You make it all an object of awareness without judgment, without saying good or bad, without accepting or rejecting. It's an amazing practice to do that. And it's so challenging. And it's so liberating when you can. And there's no fudging it. There's no faking it. You know, like if as soon as you have a purpose, then it's screwed up. As soon as you're trying to make things better, it goes bad. You know, it'll feel sour, it'll feel stale, it'll feel not alive. The only way to do it is to completely accept it and just see it. The instant you see it, you're not in it anymore. You're not doing it, you know? You're not in the fight. And then when you get in the fight again, you're trying to make it better. You're trying to get a result. You're trying to somehow steer it in a particular way. And as soon as you're doing that, it feels too worn, too familiar, too heavy, unhappy, thick. You're in the dream. You just see it, accept it, don't try and change it, make it part of your practice. Everything. And you'll find that you can do it. It's not hard. The trick, what makes it difficult, is remembering to do it. You know? The momentum carries you, yeah. Yeah, give it a try. All right, we should end. So we're going to say, do the dedication of merit. Can we do that? Huh? I'll say it for us? Okay. We'll just... Sure. This is that we give away the benefit to all sentient beings. It's such a relief to do that. When you... Yeah. No benefit for yourself. You're just giving it away. What a relief, you know. And then you get, see that brings you into the present moment much faster if you really when it's genuine. Better way to treat your what? Ego. Yeah, better. Definitely. And I'd like to get everybody's name on a piece of paper who wants to take vows before we go. So Sasha's having trouble finding it. I'll just say it for all of us. You got it? Good.
Oh, no, it's all the pages. Just do it.
Okay. Anybody who knows it can repeat along. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.